Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, everybody. Crystal Stokes here with Dr. Ira Gordon, who is a veterinarian who formerly worked in oncology and ran and operated multiple practices. And those experiences very much informed what now exists as Vetcelerator, where he serves as the chief veterinary officer. And so today we're going to be talking about Vetcelerator. What is it? How did it come to be? And how it really supports locally and privately owned veterinary hospitals. So Dr. Ira Gordon, thank you so much for being on with me today. I wonder if we could start with just a little icebreaker question. I would love to know, do you have any interesting stories, like maybe the strangest animal you ever worked on, or a case that you just really enjoy that has always stuck with you?
I once treated a therapy snake with cancer, with radiation therapy. And a therapy snake, in case you or your listeners don't know what it is a snake that is used to try to help people that have snake phobias, because it's an exceptionally friendly and calm snake, and was really a great patient, as you might expect, and a pretty unique experience.
What kind of snake was it?
It was a king snake, I believe.
Ooh, they're beautiful. This is funny. This is actually very personal to me because my mother has extreme snake phobia. And I am an exposure therapist, but we've never gone there. Like, my mom has never had, I don't think she'd let me bring a therapy snake in, but I love that they exist. So that kind of, that melts my heart a little bit to know that there was a therapy snake that received your treatment. That's really cool.
Thanks.
So let's, do you mind if we start off a bit with the origin story, kind of backing up before Vetcelerator ever existed, and your experiences owning and operating your own hospitals, and the struggles that you were experiencing that kind of led you to this idea of Vetcelerator?
Yes. I owned a group of 3 practices in Virginia with a partner of mine. And, we tried to run those practices well with our practice manager while we were, busy seeing, a caseload of patients on our own. And, we were having fun doing it, and we thought we were doing it pretty well, but it just got to be really difficult to try to be everything to those practices, to be, the chief of staff and the head of recruiting and the head of IT when something breaks, and, anything that comes up, people of course come to you as the owner, which is great. And, I sort of started to feel at times like as practice owners, you're always supporting your patients, your clients, the practice itself, your team, but like there's kind of nobody to support you except for your partner, right? And that got to be tough, and ultimately was really the driving force behind our decision to say we think that it's time for us to find another solution, and that's why we sold the practices to a corporate group.
Ooh, so intro corporate. Many people have faced this exact moment, right? Where, okay, it's such a grind. I don't see myself being able to sustain this much longer, and the idea of selling to corporate comes with a lot of relief. Can you speak to the benefits that you experienced, and how long did you stay? When you sold to corporate, did you remain at the practice, and for how long, and what benefits did you feel?
Yeah, for me, selling to a corporation, and it was a really good corporation, actually brought a lot of benefits to me and to the practices. It's like immediately, all of a sudden, lots of things that we needed to buy for the practices were less expensive. When we needed to hire somebody, there was a whole recruiting team. There was a whole marketing team. We had a regional operations vice president that really just helped us solve any problems that we were having, and gave us a ton of support. And it made a big difference. The practices were doing much better a couple of years after they took over than while we were running them ourselves. And I remember my partner, he said to me one day, he said, Ira, we didn't realize it at the time. Like, we thought we were doing pretty good. But what we were trying to do, be good vets and be good at managing all aspects of the practice, like, that was impossible, right? And I think it really stuck with me. But I stayed with the practices, to finish answering your question, for about 4 years until this opportunity came up.
Oh, so interesting. It's something I see in any industry, really, is that when we try to be the jack of all trades, what is that expression? Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes.
And we, generally speaking, do have a tendency to shine in certain areas and be pretty awful in others. And we know from the research, the more time we spend doing the things that we really do enjoy and are good at, we're competent at, we feel fulfillment, and it's a lot less exhausting. Now, we can put that same amount of time into something we're bad at, but for some reason, I guess because it's more challenging and we don't have the capacity for it, it's much more taxing.
You're absolutely right. And it's actually both, right? One problem is you actually don't have the time to do all of those things well. And then the second piece of it is, of course, like, you aren't great at everything, no matter how great you think you are, right? And for the most part, what veterinarians are great at and what drives them and what they've spent a lot of time training to do well is provide great care, great medicine to vets and to their families, right? And that's generally what we wanted to do and what makes us most happy. And then when we end up trying to, do all these other things, oftentimes that we aren't trained to do, maybe didn't really love doing in the first place, right? It really can become a struggle, and not surprising that it, starts to stress you out and wear on you.
You mean you didn't think at 10 years old, gosh, I really hope I get to do payroll one day. And I love IT and figuring out all the tech stuff. That sounds fun. And inventory, I'm excited about it.
Well, yeah, it's ironic, of course, because I did not. And then I sort of, I think it's pretty funny that I left, my clinical job to take this position where those administrative things is all we do. But of course, my role is to figure out how we can do those things to help vets that were struggling like I was. So that's really meaningful to me.
Yes. Okay. So I'm sure many people listening can sympathize with being in this position of saying, I wish I could just focus all my time and energy doing the things that I really enjoy, what I've been trained to do, what I want to do, working with patients, working with clients, providing excellent medicine and patient-client care. And it would be nice to be able to offload some of these other tasks that have to be done, but I don't really want to do. They're mandatory. So when I want to talk more about the corporate side, because most of us know about corporate and that is a route that you can go. But it also comes with downsides. Would you be willing to speak at all to that, either from your experiences or just general knowledge?
I can try. I'm really not entirely anti-corporate, although I'm very pro small business and pro entrepreneur. But I think the reality is that when you sell a veterinary practice to a corporation, decisions are going to be made by different people with different priorities, oftentimes with different backgrounds that aren't always veterinary, and that ultimately decisions that impact your practice are made based on kind of the best interests of the whole, right? And not necessarily what is in the best interests of any one specific practice or group. And if that's the one you care about or the one that you're working at, those decisions may be ones that actually are not what you wanted for yourself or for your team or for your practice. And so I've certainly experienced that as well.
Yes. And to add to that, some of the things that I have heard from other veterinarians and staff, like technical staff, is, and this is not always the case, it's just sometimes the case, sometimes it does create a shift in culture where the OG hospital goes from having ownership and really feeling like this is our baby. And so we are really invested in this at an emotional level, to becoming more checked out. Like, now we're just working for somebody. And what's the real, now that I don't have ownership of it even anymore, I don't feel as connected to it anymore. So a bit of apathy may creep in a bit. And I've heard of some hospitals that have had a bit of a shock where it may have been sold quickly, and the owner actually is selling in order to leave because maybe they want to retire or move on to something else, or they're burned out, they need to recover. And there's a bit of an abandonment that can be felt by the team. But I've also heard good stories of people that felt tremendous relief by corporate coming. The culture was actually boosted up because they received a lot more benefits that helped support the staff, that gave more like mental wellness benefits that are suddenly available,
Sure.
weren't available before, or inventory management that they had never seen. And now their flow is so much better. So I've heard some horror stories. I've also heard some very positive stories and the range in between. But I think just to speak to that, to say we know what we're talking about. When it comes to corporate, it's a mixed bag. It's complicated. But some people listening to this may think, I've looked at the corporate route. I've explored my options. I don't want to do that. I definitely want to stay independently owned. But I'll admit, I'm really tired of doing my IT and the admin and all of this operational stuff. And I think this is where Vetcelerator comes in. And I'd love to just pass it over to you, since this is your area of specialty, and take it wherever you feel is best for people that may be in this position.
Yeah, and I think that's really well said. First, regarding kind of the the stories that you hear of both really good outcomes, as well as, I mean, frankly, sometimes disastrous outcomes related to changes that happen in clinics when there are those types of ownership and leadership changes, and that can be very variable. But exactly, when clinics do want to sort of remain independent, or it's just not the right time or fit for them to make a transition, what we do at Vetcelerator is that we are the first sort of comprehensive veterinary service organization, and it's a model that does exist in other healthcare professions quite broadly. Like in dentistry, most dentistry offices are backed by what's called a DSO, a dental service organization, and we sort of see ourselves as the first VSO. So what does that mean? It really means that we provide comprehensive support for just about everything that happens in a veterinary practice, other than the medicine itself, right? I mean, that's the one thing that we don't touch, and it is in many ways very analogous to some of the things that we spoke about that corporations can provide to practices when they take them over. We can provide practices with significant group buying power and big discounts on many of the things that they buy, which can of course help them to be more profitable or more successful. We can help them with their recruiting and HR needs. Lots of the veterinary owners I talk to, those are areas that can be a big source of stress and difficulty. And so we help them in those areas. We help with operational supports. I oversee what we call our clinic success team, where we meet with clinics regularly to actually look at how the business is doing. How frequently did I really get together with my partner to look at how the business was doing and make decisions? We were pretty busy, not as often as we should have, but we actually do that. And the big difference in our model is when we had a vice president of operations, ultimately, like, he was our boss, right? Like, if you wanted to make a change, you got to sort of follow along. But in our model, and what's unique about our model, is we don't take any ownership of the clinics. We're just providing service and support. And so in that model, although we may see things and maybe make some suggestions or think there's some different options, the clinic owner is actually one that is the owner, as the name implies, right? And so we can't force any changes upon them that they don't want, and they frankly probably know better than we do what is best for them, their team, and their clients.
Oh, you just slipped that in like it was no big deal. So I'm going to highlight this, because I always like to play the skeptic. In the back of my mind, I'm pretending I'm listening to this podcast. I'm thinking, okay, so this person, this corporation, this Vetcelerator offers all of the operational services. So what kind of cut do you want? You want 51% of my hospital? Like, that's what I'd automatically start thinking. You're just another form of a corporation. And what you just said was, we don't take any ownership. You were paying just for the service, and you maintain full ownership of your company.
That is what makes us different than everybody else. And some of those other models may be right for certain people, right? It may be that I'd rather get that support by sharing in the ownership of my hospital with somebody else, or giving all of it to somebody else, but we don't want any of it, right? Like we of course, we don't do this for free. We collect a fee for those services, but that's our model. And we sometimes like to think of ourselves as, you could hire an employee to do this, or you can hire our team of dozens of people that have individual expertise in each of these sort of service areas to help support your hospital. And in many cases, that probably makes a lot more sense.
I love it. One-stop shop for all the back-end needs. All right, well, let's get to the nitty-gritty. Let's say my ears are perked up and I'm kind of interested. Like, this sounds kind of cool, but I'm thinking, first of all, is this for me? So are there certain, when you think about the types of hospitals that would benefit most from this, do you have kind of a sweet spot where you'd say, hey, if you're too small or too big, or, that it probably is not the best service, we really focus on this type of hospital? Is that a reasonable question?
It's a great question. And of course, we're happy to talk with anybody, but our core hospital is typically going to be a companion animal hospital, small animal hospital, usually smaller, like 1 to 3 doctor practice is probably the vast majority of the clinics that we support. And we find that they are the ones that have the least additional help to do all of these things. And so they're the place where we can make the biggest impact. We've had conversations and some relationships with some mixed animal practices, even some mobile practices, but our core hospital that we are sort of built for is that small 1 to 3 doctor small animal practice.
Okay, nice. Can you walk me through what happens if I reach out and start the process? Can we kind of paint the picture of what happens, how you collect data, and then make a recommendation? I must imagine it like diagnostics. If you kind of run the diagnostics on my company and then come back with a treatment plan, and then I get to say, I'll do half the treatment plan.
That's so funny. That's almost exactly how I think of it too. But yes, so we start with what we call a discovery call, but basically we just want to learn a little bit more about what your practice is like, what your biggest needs are, what areas you need the most help in, and share a bit about the services that we can provide, and see if it's worth taking kind of the next step towards figuring this out. And that next step is what we call a clinic performance review, or a CPR of your practice. And in those CPRs, what we do is we ask for some of your recent documents, like your recent profit and loss statements, some of your recent orders for inventory, and then we actually look to see how does it look like you're doing, and are there some obvious areas where we can give you some advice, whether or not you end up working with us on, how to potentially improve how some of those things look, or areas that you might be able to improve, how your practice is sort of performing in search, and, how you're doing in, the sort of benchmark metrics of how well-run practices typically see their costs versus revenues. And through that process, we can also oftentimes look and see, how much savings there might be by working with us. If we know what you're paying for the things that you're ordering, we can look at what you'd be paying if you joined us, and that helps us to sort of really build the model to say, does it make sense for us to work together? Can we really help your practice, both financially and operationally? Really, that's our goal. And then from there, we obviously review that assessment with the clinic owner and practice managers. They're really both our partners in this process, and ultimately sort of kind of figure out what they need, what we can provide, and if we're a good fit. Great.
And if you decide you're a good fit, is there a typical duration of time that you would say, start with at least the mindset of committing to 6 months or 3 months to really get traction? Because I imagine that there's, the transition of shifting processes out of one person's hands. Like, I'm the clinic owner and I've been doing it all, and trying to sort through everything and get it organized and move it over to Vetcelerator. I'd love to help listeners kind of imagine what that onboarding process is like, and how long it would take, how to wrap their mind around when they would actually start to feel relief or feel the traction of handing over a lot of these responsibilities to Vetcelerator.
Yeah, so there's some things that happen right away, right? Yeah, so as soon as we can, we can move a clinic over to our contract so that they can get a discount on the things that they're ordering, and that can make a surprisingly big impact relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. There are some things that might take longer if we're looking at, a clinic's technology and wanting to make some improvements or changes. Those are things that we tend to implement over a timeline of quite a few months, and so that can take some time, and can sometimes be a bit of change to manage at the clinic as well, to say the least, and so. But then there's other things that can also really make a huge difference right away. We actually started working with an independent practice on the East Coast, and less than a month after working with us, she had I think it was her well actually had a pipe burst and it flooded her parking lot. And we have a whole facilities team. Like she called us and it's like, I don't know what to do. My parking lot is flooded. And our facilities team said, we'll take care of it. Like, you just take care of your patients. We'll call people to clean up the mess and fix the problem and take care of this for you. And she went to work and we got her a few different bids on, getting it all fixed and the cost. And she chose who she wanted to work with. And then one of the biggest surprises that came from this actually came afterwards. Our head of facilities, Tom, said, hey, do you have, can I look at your insurance policy? And she's like, why? It's like, well, this might be covered. And so he actually then did the legwork to reach out to, he did all of it. You have to do this, right? I'm like reflecting back on when I was a practice manager or practice owner, I would have been trying to figure this out all myself. And so Tom worked with her insurance broker and got all but I think $500 of about a $25,000 repair covered by insurance, which was her deductible. And the insurance broker even said to Tom, he's like, I'm going to mention you guys to the other vet clinics that I work with because like you have this all together. You made this so easy for us. And of course, you never know when something like that's going to happen. But that happened very soon after starting to work with this practice and was sort of an example of the type of support and service we can provide right away.
That is such a good story because I can see. I'm thinking of clinics that I work with. I can definitely imagine where if that happened and they did not have Vetcelerator, they would have just paid for the repair and moved on because there is no.
Yeah, you got other things to do.
That's $25,000 spent that could have been recouped. But at the end of the day, time is actually the resource that is the most limited and most precious. And so that's the one that wins. But $25,000 on the table of a huge, parking lot or plumbing repair, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is a perfect example of like a really smart vet who knows nothing about, things like insurance and isn't thinking about them. Like it might not even dawn on them to say, hey, this might be covered, but somebody like Tom that, like he does facilities, he looks at insurance and leases, like all these things all the time. Like he knows who's supposed to be responsible for these things because it's what he does and it's what he, spends his time thinking about. And, it just shows what a difference that can make.
Huge. Oh, it's, there's a real benefit to knowing when and what to delegate. And I think that's something that often comes with maturity and a lot of hard licks to realize that trying to do it all is really fruitless and it denies the work that could be done, like better patient care, more time with your team, delivering better medicine. Now you get to spend your time doing that instead of being on the phone with insurance.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm still a delegator in training. I'm sort of getting better at it as I get older.
I'll join your club. Okay, so can you tell me more about the regions that you currently operate in? Like, are you able to provide a lot of this virtually? Do you all do in-person, house calls? How does that work? And where are the regions that you primarily are serving now? And where can you serve?
So we support clinics all over the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast. We don't currently have any international or clinics in Canada, although I wouldn't rule out the possibility. It just hasn't come up yet. Most of our support is going to be through, sort of virtual online and sort of implementation of support remotely. Although we do through our clinic success program, we visit clinics and meet with clinic managers and owners on a scheduled basis and sort of as needed as well. So it varies based on the needs of specific practices, but a lot of it's done from afar. Okay,
wonderful. Do you have any other stories or kind of case studies that you might want to share? Because sometimes examples really help paint the picture in people's minds. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious for myself as well, of any other types of moments where you kind of came in and saved the day, or maybe it's more of a longer term thing that was provided that definitely made a big impact on the hospital.
I can think of a couple. So we have a vet whose clinic we've supported for a while. That when she started, she was really nervous about owning a clinic, and just felt like she didn't really have the business background or acumen to do this, but had some interest in sort of in clinic ownership, and through a lot of discussion, ended up sort of taking the plunge into owning her own clinic. And just a couple of weeks ago, she actually signed a lease to open her second clinic because her first clinic's doing well and she's ready to grow it. And, I don't want to take too much credit. Really, all the credit goes to her. But, with our support, she just feels like, I can do this. Right. And so that's pretty neat to see. We got a really meaningful testimonial from one of the vets that we support that started off with, I used to dread going into my clinic every day because of all the different things that they had to do, and how that having support. I think sort of this concept that vet clinic owners are supporting everybody else but don't have anybody to support them. But finally, sort of having that helped to alleviate a lot of those both actual burdens and just kind of the stress of feeling like there's nobody else. It's all on me.
Oh, I appreciate you brought that point back up, because I remember earlier we kind of touched on that briefly, but it sort of fell through the cracks. And I see this in most helping professions, whether it's nursing, doctors, therapists, teachers, kind of this archetype of a person that gives, but doesn't always receive, I even self-admit that the art of receiving, like it's actually a practice. And to see these veterinarians and technicians, everybody within the practice, the front desk, the assist, the kennel, giving, working really hard. And to know there's got to be, a feedback loop to re-energize and have time to recharge. And so offloading some of the more operational tasks and providing, maybe that time doesn't go all towards the practice. Maybe that extra time that I've gotten back as a veterinarian goes to my family, or goes to relaxing or exercising or meditating or taking a vacation, or just the sweeter parts of life. And to know that you have somebody that has your back, you can call when that emergency happens, or if you want to consult on something that's not in your wheelhouse, you have this team of experts that this is what they do. They spend their days obsessively monitoring, learning, knowing the latest and greatest about this part of inventory or this part of IT or hiring. And, it's nice to know that you can rely on these other people to support you.
Yeah, and I love the way you said that. I think we really think of our mission as being to try to help clinic owners to achieve their goals faster, whatever those goals are, right? And certainly for some of them, those goals might be to grow their practice as quickly and aggressively as they can. But for many, that's actually not their goal, right? Their goal is to have a bit more time to do some of these other things and sort of have just fewer responsibilities and some help in all these areas. And so whatever those goals might be, we feel like we want to utilize the support and services that we have to offer to help them get there.
Yes. I'll kind of add on to this, that when you and I have been talking about Vetcelerator and where it fits into this big picture of veterinary medicine right now, I kind of playfully said, you're sort of like the Goldilocks of offerings, because we have on one side of the spectrum, corporate, which is, it's large, they're, it's a whole giant machine in a way, and it comes with its own set of pros and cons, but it's a big thing. And over here, the teensy little independents, they're just trying to do it all and bootstrap it by themselves and just grind it down and make it work. And then in between, there's Vetcelerator that very much is giving those who want to stay independent, let's say that's a value to them. They just say, all right, look, I just want to be independent. It's my value system. It's how I want to operate. Ride or die. I'm staying independent. Mm-hmm. It's nice to know that they can sort of be a little more competitive now in the market and have a leg up with the other ones like corporates that do have a lot of support. So now you can sort of play in the same sandbox and really have that excellent patient care with quality of life.
Yeah. I sometimes like to think that there's sort of like the old way of doing veterinary medicine, which was typically you were the practice owner, you kind of did everything, you built your clinic in your community, and ultimately you got older and closer to retirement, you hired an associate that worked there for a while, and they bought your sort of practice. And that's kind of how the business worked, right? Yeah. But then, over the last 20 years, what's changed is that, really, corporatization of the profession has happened, and that has changed a lot of things, which made it harder for vets to buy those practices. But as importantly, it's made it really hard for practices that were run the old way to compete with the corporates that have so much, efficiency and advantages. It's kind of unfair to be the small independent practice owner. And so what we see at Vetcelerator is potentially this new way that provides a lot of the types of support and benefit that clinics can get by being a part of a corporation, but without having to give up that ownership, right? And so hopefully creating a new path for those people that either the time or the desire is not there to sort of make that type of to exit their practice or to sell it, but that are struggling to really compete in the current environment, and or just struggling to compete with all the demands on their time related to their responsibilities to both be oftentimes the main generator of revenue as sort of the veterinarian, while also the person trying to really run that business well along with their practice manager. And it's as I said before, and we ended up sort of looking back and feeling like what we were trying to do was impossible.
Oh. So I got to go to my core of what I'm here for on this planet, which is very much supporting the wellness of people. And I always play with this little tagline in my head. I think it all the time, which is, bringing the purpose and passion back to the people in practice. And honestly, I'd love to do this in any industry. So I can see challenges with this in psychotherapy. I see it with human med. I see it with the teachers that I've worked with. I see it all over. And often what it comes down to is having permission and boundaries and support to take care of ourselves. That is a part of being alive on this planet. And it's really unfortunate to toil away our whole life, grinding it down and not really ever feeling that sense of purpose or passion again, having that apathy set in from being exhausted and burned out and never seeing an end to it. And we know that there are major challenges that people in the vet med profession face around mental wellness and mental health. And Vetcelerator in its own way is very much supporting the offloading of some of those burdens that create that deep sense of burnout. And again, sometimes being burned out is what drives people to sell their practice. And I've had multiple veterinarians on my show who have a story that goes something like, I got so burned out and I thought I need to quit vet med and never go back. And it's not that they don't love it. It's not that they are not meant to be veterinarians, that they don't want to spend their time practicing medicine, helping animals, but they feel like failures because they can't keep up with the burden and the load that's expected. And so that talking about these things frankly, and that these issues are solvable, and there are people like yourself and Vetcelerator out there working hard to solve these issues. And it's a work in progress. We're all trying to pull together to make it happen. But this is born on the backs of people who've been there. So I appreciate your origin story. And in bringing this to a close today, I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else that you'd want to say in terms of how Vetcelerator exists in this world, the big why behind Vetcelerator. And for those listening, if you feel connected with this message, how you can reach out and the best way also to get in touch with you.
Well, thank you very much. I think that the big why behind Vetcelerator is that we really we just don't think that it is fair that independent clinics just don't have the types of resources and advantages that larger groups do, and we think that they should. We think that independent clinic ownership is an important part of the veterinary profession, and we don't want to see that go away because of a lack of options. And so we hope to provide that. I love what you said about sort of the need to address the challenges, the burnout and sort of mental health issues that do plague our profession. It would be great to feel like we are some small piece of trying to help with that problem. I think you're right. It is not a simple problem to solve, and there's a lot of facets of it, which you probably know even better than I do. But it's pretty neat to feel like we might be a part of a number of solutions that are needed to a problem like that. And
before you tell people where to find you, I'll just say, just like to overstate the importance of this, when I first entered this realm of veterinary medicine, I was offered a position as an in-house therapist. And I was extremely clear that that was not the answer to the problem, because I can do therapy all day long with people, but if their operations are a hot mess, all I'm doing is a Band-Aid saying, sorry that you are so burned out and there's nothing a therapist can do about it. And you're just going to be grinding into infinity because we aren't solving the operational issues within your hospital. And
unfortunately, I feel like the veterinary profession is oftentimes the last one to get help when it comes to some of these kinds of things. So we didn't talk about this, but my very first business, which I started 16 years ago or so, was an online service to help veterinarians prepare for their board exams. And the only reason we started it was there was nothing to help us. And we went to see our med students, and they had all these really neat online training resources. And me and my friends looked at each other and said, how come nobody cares about us? How come nobody's built something like this for us? And we said, you know what? Maybe we just need to build it for ourselves. And I think Vetcelerator is the same way. Like we talked about, these types of support organizations, they exist in so many similar types of professions, but they haven't yet existed for veterinarians until now. So, hopefully we can make that change.
That's how these things happen. You see a need and you say, oh, it's there. Somebody should build it. Oh, guess what? It's going to be you. And you do it. And it's wonderful to model after things that are already working. They work in other industries and other countries across the world. These things exist. So take what works, replicate it here for veterinary medicine, and let's make things better and take some of the burden off. It's so exciting and fun to know that this is happening and you are out there. So wonderful. On that note, how do people connect with you? I will link all of this up in the show notes, so don't feel like you have to spell everything out. If you have particular places that people should go to read more, or if they have specific questions, who to connect with.
Our website is the best spot. So that's www.vetcelerator.com, where you can get more information. We'd be more than happy to set up one of those discovery calls with you. And really the only outcome of that is to decide if you want us to provide one of these free clinic performance reviews for your practice. And even if you don't end up working with us, I've sat in many of those. And oftentimes there's been really significant insights and help that can be shared with practices. And we can also help to figure out, are we the right fit to help you with some of the challenges that you may be facing, or the, or your goals, whether that's to grow your practice or even to potentially transition your practice in the future. We've talked a lot about this being the solution for people that want to stay independent, but we also do help a lot of practices that want to stay independent for now, but also want to position their practice for a future opportunity to sell it to either another associate or even to a corporate group.
Fabulous. I love your all's flexibility and that you take the time to really do the matchmaking process to see, are we a good fit now or maybe down the road? Or if not, what resources could we connect you with that would be a better fit? And I really do appreciate the work that you're doing, Ira and Vetcelerator. It's a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Great to see you. Thanks for your time. And I love what you're doing too, Crystal. Take care.
Take care. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.